Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Well, Christmas is just around the corner, so we will be creating a beautiful snowy winter wonderland Christmas card. I will be using a gingerbread house for my focal point today. Well, before we take a look at how I created this card, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified each time I post a new video. Well, here's a look at the die set that I will be using for our card today. This is the house die from Sizzix. It has 11 total dies which will create a beautiful gingerbread house. We also have tiny little dies to create a snowman and some Christmas trees. Well, for our card today, I will be using only the house and all the components that we will be using to construct this gingerbread house. I like to store all of those little die cuts and the dies itself in this little container, which is easy to store away all those small little pieces, and I don't need to be scared of losing them anywhere. Well, to begin with, I have a white cardstock. This is an A2 size cardstock, and I will be using this to cut out all of my pieces. You could also use colored cardstock to cut out your pieces, but I find it more easy or less time consuming when I cut all of these tiny little dies using a white cardstock and coloring it depending on what I want to create or what the focal point will look like. Now, for the main frame of the house and the roof, I have used this cream color and light brown color cardstock. Well, like I mentioned before, you could also cut these out using white cardstock and color it using alcohol markers, watercolors, or any colors of your choice. Well, let's work on this component of the roof. This looks like maybe since it's a winter wonderland house that I'm trying to create, I will be adding some snow detailing to this roof. There are so many ways you can add a snowy effect to your project. You could use gels, pastes, glitter, or use even glitter cardstock. Well, this is one of my favorite and easiest techniques to apply glue. I like to hold this tiny, delicate roof piece with the reverse tweezers by Cat Scrappiness, and using my fine tip barely art glue, I apply glue at random places on this roof piece. Once I'm satisfied with that, what I do is just go ahead and pour a generous amount of this glitz glitter powder all over the glue. Be it any other time of the year, I wouldn't have gone with this glitter powder. Well, it does really get a lot messy. But since it's Christmas, wintry, magical, I really love how this glitter powder turns out on the roof of my gingerbread house. All I do is have a rough printer paper to hold all of that glitter, which I can then pour out into the container. I will let all that glitter and snow dry while we work on these tiny little elements of our gingerbread house. First, we will fix the string lights for our house. I have cut out tiny little bulbs using yellow, purple, and blue color cardstock. I like to store all these tiny little pieces in this triangle tray by Cat Scrappiness, and for these pieces, it's difficult to pick them up, so it's better to use a jewel picker or a sequin picker. It makes your job a lot more easier. Next, I went ahead and using my alcohol markers, I colored all of these tiny little elements. These are windows, curtains, and the rooms and doors for our gingerbread house. I didn't do any kind of fancy coloring here. It was just simple coloring, one layered coloring with each color. Now we can fix all of these pieces, and I'm using my Barely Art glue again to fix these tiny little pieces. Now this is a card design which you could easily mass produce. Well, you could keep it similar with the same kind of snowy background, the same gingerbread house, or you could add more features to it, including the little snowman and the Christmas trees, which were part of the die. While my snowy, glittery rooftop is drying, I thought let's just fix the doors and windows of the house. I will be keeping this dark brown roof structure over it just to make sure that I'm placing my doors and windows properly and well aligned to the rest of the house. This is a very easy design to recreate, and placing all of these little elements were really easy. We also have tiny little detailings in this die, which is why I love this die so much. Here is a small little layer of snow that went on my windows and on my little chimney. Next, I want to create a snow hill for my house. For that, I'm using this Crafter's Essential Winter Dies. This is by Cat Scrappiness. This has two snow hills, some Christmas trees, and a reindeer. I'll be using one of those snow hill dies and cut it out using the white cardstock. And here we have a snow bank which is perfect for our A2 size card and which will go behind the house. If you want to add more dimension to your card, you could also cut out a second snow hill. For my sentiment, I will be stamping the Merry Christmas sentiment from the Reindeer Game stamp set, again by Cat Scrappiness. I stamped it using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink right on top of the snow hill. Now to add some more texture and layers and well character to my snow hill, I will do the same exact thing that I did for my rooftop. I'm using some glue and just very roughly lining up the edge of the snow hill. Make sure that I'm not being very precise, very neat. No, I'm roughly applying glue on the snow hill, and then again I will generously pour all of that glitter powder over the snow hill. I love how glittery and shiny this turned out. I will let it dry. Well, this will take approximately, say, 10 to 15 minutes for the snow and the glitter to completely dry. Meanwhile, let's finish up with our gingerbread house. Now, all we have to do is assemble the roof and place it on top of our house. I stuck all of the elements of the rooftop using liquid glue. You could also use spray adhesive here since these are really tiny, thin pieces of die cuts. Now, before we fix the roof onto the main frame of the house, I wanted to create something more colorful background. For that, I will be using my Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink in the shade Cadette and create a halo effect around the house. I'm using a blending brush and very light-handedly blending the blue around the house. I'm not covering up the entire background here. Now let's start assembling the card. First, we will begin with the snow hill. I'm using some double-sided tape to attach this snow hill onto the base of our card panel. You can also use some foam tape to pop it up and create a dimensional look. Now the panel that I'm using here is slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. This measures 4 by 5 and quarter, so I had to trim out the snow hill slightly from both the ends. Now let's fix our house. For the roof of the house, I will be using some foam tape to add some dimension to it. You will see that I'm using liquid glue here. This is so that I have some kind of wiggle room before I finally stick the roof onto the house. Now once I'm done with that, I will use my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen to add some sparkle to the little snow ledges on the window and on the chimney. Now we can adhere the card front onto a pre-folded note card. Here I'm using a top folding note card and I adhere this panel using some double-sided tape. Now all we have to do is adhere the main focal point of our card on this card front. Well, for that, I'm using some double-sided tape and some liquid glue. Well, you could also go ahead and pop up the house using some foam tape, but since the roof of my house was already popped up, I decided to go with a flatter look. So I'm using some double-sided tape and some liquid glue for that wiggle room before I finally fix the house onto my card front. Using the lightest shade of grey alcohol marker that I had in my stash, I created this little shadowy effect below the house and some streaks of grey coming out of the chimney that will resemble the smoke coming out of the chimney. Well, to embellish my card front, I have the white snowflake sprinkles by Cat Scrappiness. I randomly placed it all over my card front just to create a snowy effect for the card. I finished off this card by adding some glossy accents to those little light bulbs on our string lights. Well, I love how beautiful this card looks and it can be easily mass produced. I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired, and I will leave a link down in the description box below for all the supplies that I used in today's video. I would love for you to become a subscriber to my channel, and if you do subscribe or are already a subscriber, please make sure to hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the next time I post. Also, hit the like button and let me know in the comments down below if you have any ideas or suggestions. If you'd like to share your creations with me, please tag me on my Instagram at rp_shutbug. There's a link to that in the description box below. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.